Lesson on geomorphic process. My dear students, I hope you enjoyed the video on tectonic plate theory in the last class. Today we enter into further searching. The study of geomorphic process of the earth is another mysterious lesson in geography. In an ordinary language, geomorphology is the study or the discourse of various line forms of the surface of the earth. The land surface feature of the earth is varied. One hand we find the rolling hills, the other side we find steep-sided flat uplands, one hand valleys, the other hand mountains, plateaus, sand dunes, deltas, and so on. These are the results of changes in the configuration of the surface of the earth. These constant and gradual changes of the surface of the earth is due to geomorphic process. Geomorphic process comprises of two levels. Level A, endogenetic processes. Level B is the exogenetic processes. In a summary form, endogenetic forces are generated in the interior of the earth and causes mountains and plateaus to subside. The tectonic plate theory explains that the solid lithosphere is made up of several continental and oceanic tectonic plates, which are about 15 to 20 of them. The continental plates are lying on the oceanic plates almost in a floating condition. The high temperature and the pressure below the crust produces traces of melting, which allows the plate to move on this layer. The movement is very slow and gradual. It's about 10 to 20 millimeters in a year. There are three types of plate boundaries based on the type of movements:
convergent boundaries, divergent boundaries, and transform boundaries. I'll talk about each of these briefly. So convergent boundaries are where two plates come together in a head-on collision, usually between oceanic plate and a continental plate. When this happens, one plate will be subducted beneath the other plate, so it'll be pulled into the mantle and melted down. And this melting can cause a volcano to form on the continental plate. At divergent boundaries, two plates are moving in opposite directions. As convection currents drive these plates apart, magma rises up from the mantle to form new crust and a ridge or depression between the plates. And finally, in transform boundaries, two plates slide past one another. This sliding motion results in built-up tension that, when released, causes earthquakes. The San Andreas Fault is a well-known transform boundary.
Exogenic process. These are the external forces or processes which bring about changes on the surface of the land. These agents are rivers, the glaciers, the winds, the waves, the weather, the man, animal, and even the plants. These agents wear down the surface at one place or one area and deposit it elsewhere. In geographical term, This is known as gradation. Again, in an ordinary term, it means tearing down the upper or the higher surface of the earth and bring it and deposit to the lower surface as leveling. Leveling of water is noticed immediately, whereas the leveling of the land surface is so gradual and so slow that we do not notice it right away. Landforms created due to the weather changes and due to its effect, heat and cold, is termed as weathering. Take this example of rocks in the desert. Due to constant and day-to-day heat and cold, the rocks begin to disintegrate and begin to fall apart into bits and bytes. They are broken into sand and pebbles of different sizes. Hence, these agents like river, glacier, wind, wave, etc. have three major roles to play, namely erosion of the surface, where they tear down, they break down the surface of the earth. Second, transport, which means they carry away these debris and particles. Third, the deposit. It means filling up these debris and pebbles in the lower places. This process is known as gradational process. In this process, we find two terms are very important. One among them is the degradation, which means, in a simpler language, tearing down or breaking down by erosion and by transportation and by mass wasting. Mass wasting is a land mass moving in a big, large amount at a time. Secondly, the aggradation, which means leveling or increasing the height of the lower surface of the earth. We shall study in details all these different beautiful landforms created by river, glacier, wind, and so on in class 10. These are some of its beautiful examples like waterfall, canyons, hanging valleys, flat plains, deltas, and so on. And now let us, in a summary form, classify these landforms. In a simpler classification, these landforms can be divided into three categories. A. Mountains, B. The plateaus, C. The plains. Let's come to mountain in a summary form. A mountain is that landform whose height is at least 900 meters above the sea level. The lower mountains are called hills. Let us divide them further into three categories. One among them is on the basis of height. On the basis of height, mountains can be divided into four categories. The lower level, one, is the hills, which are between 700 to 1000 meters high. Second, the rough mountains, which are between the 1000 meters to 1500 meters. 3. The rugged mountains. These are from 1500 meters to 2000 meters above the sea level. And the topmost is the mountain, which are above 2000 meters above the sea level. Secondly, on the basis of location. On the basis of location, mountains are into two categories. One is known as continental, the other one is known as oceanic. Thirdly, on the basis of mode of origin, mountains can be divided into 5 categories. First, tectonic. Second, block mountains. Third, dome mountains. Fourth, volcanic mountains. And fifth, residual mountains. Again, for our further studies and simplified studies, they have been divided on the basis of structure and origin. Accordingly, mountains are divided into 4 categories: the fold mountains, the block mountains, the volcanic mountains, and residual mountains. If you like the program and videos, don't forget to subscribe. Just press the button.